Nowe technologie, te wszystkie nowości, o których mówimy podczas dyskusji na scenie czwartej, mogą mieć bardzo ważny i bardzo duży wpływ na przyszłe społeczeństwa. No właśnie, co będzie kształtowało te przyszłe społeczeństwa? Co będzie miało na nie kluczowy wpływ? Jak te przyszłe społeczeństwa będą wyglądały? Przed jakimi wyzwaniami będą stały? O tym będziemy dyskutować w dalszej części tego naszego dzisiejszego spotkania. Ostatnie bardzo trudne miesiące w naszym regionie pokazały, że w obliczu wojny, cierpienia naszych sąsiadów jesteśmy w stanie wznieść się na wyżyny i pomagać tym najbardziej potrzebującym i tym pokrzywdzonym. Polacy zdali doskonały egzamin, pomagając Ukraińcom napadniętym przez reżim Władimira Putina. Ale nadal bardzo wiele regionów świata mierzy się z takimi wyzwaniami wojny, głodu, chorób i bardzo wielu cierpień. Pytanie, jaka jest skuteczność działań humanitarnych i charytatywnych w czasach globalnych turbulencji. I o tym już za chwilę w kolejnym panelu porozmawiają goście Grzegorza Lewickiego, przedstawiciela International Society for the Comparative Study of Civilization. Serdecznie zapraszam na tę dyskusję.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is short. We have to run it, but it should be fun. There is this some short rules. 2 minutes for an answer. There will be 2 questions, identical questions for all of you. Yes, and let's start. And I would like to present you my distinguished guest, Neil Brighton from Norwegian Refugee Council. Igor Czernecki from ISCSC Foundation, Alan Moseley from International Rescue Committee, and Jagoda Zakrzewska from Google. Of course, we would not be able to ask a question different from the one that was already foreshadowed by the introduction, namely, how does Russia's invasion change the dynamic of charity and aid in the Central European region? And how does your organization adapt to change on the example of the specific project? I will ask the questions in alphabetical order. So, Neil Brighton, the floor is yours. 2 minutes.
The clock is running. Hello, everybody. I think, yes, the Ukraine crisis and the response in the region has accelerated some things for sure in our INGO line of work, but there remain other things that are still quite common to a lot of other regions in context in which we work, which I think is interesting to reflect on. One thing that's really been accelerated here is localization and a number of the grand bargain commitments. For us in Poland, certainly, NRC globally, we work in 34 countries in different conflict zones around the world, and often we work directly. We hire our own staff to do our activities, and here we very much work through civil society, local partners for the vast majority of our activities, which is quite important. Equally, the private sector here has been active and proactive in hiring refugees from Ukraine in various programs. We heard one from MasterCard the other day, and that's, so we want to be sure how INGOs like IRC, ourselves, and others can complement those big initiatives and make sure we promote pathways for vulnerable refugees and migrants. And just a few quick points on things that are common, I think, to other places. And we see here, especially with the demographic of refugees, is the specific needs of women and children with the refugees from Ukraine. Also the host family fatigue. I mean, the host family solidarity here in Poland has been truly incredible. And we see this in other contexts, but not to the extent that we've seen it here. But that trend is decreasing, and as more people then have to go into the rental market, how do we make sure that's safe and free of exploitation? And lastly, even though we're in Poland and Europe, there are still barriers for refugees to exercise their rights. For example, the right to education. Children that are affected by trauma need specific support in the classroom if they're to train and learn. So those are just a few reflections. Thanks.
Igor, what's your take on this Central European initiative And how do you manage the current turmoil?
Thank you for the question, Grzegorz, and thank you to the organizers for having me here. There's a lot of, I've heard a lot of positive remarks about the reaction to this crisis, and it's deserved, of course. Even today, during lunch, the American ambassador was underlining what a wonderful job Poland did. But of course, this is also a gigantic challenge, right? And in a way, perhaps, it's also potentially a problem, right? If this is not managed well in the long run. There are right now around 27,000 Belarusian children and around 200,000 Ukrainian children in primary and middle school in Poland. There is about 4 times that number of Ukrainian children in Poland who are not in schools, who are studying online through the Ukrainian system. Some of these children maybe will return to the Ukraine. That uncertainty, of course, adds to the difficulties with integration. But those difficulties are becoming felt in public schools. Pressures put on those institutions. There's a tension between trying to accommodate to the obvious difficulties with language barriers, with trauma, with war, and the resentment that creates amongst Polish children who don't exactly necessarily understand why their colleagues are having it easier. And I think that right now this isn't fully appreciated as a problem yet, but it probably will be more and more of a problem that can be, of course, used to terrible ends politically. So these are huge challenges which we are trying to face, and this, I think, requires a lot of cooperation.
And how does this look like from the perspective of international rescue community, Alan?
Yeah, thanks very much. It's really great to have the chance to have this discussion, and hope we can have some exchange a little bit later. When I was thinking about the topic for this panel and the way to answer it, I wanted to focus on the topic of participation and communication with the affected population in humanitarian response. This is, something that's one of our shared commitments as international NGOs, as signatories to the core humanitarian standards. It's, we consider it to be our obligation to involve refugees, people affected by crisis, in the decisions that affect them, and also to provide two-way communication with them, feedback channels, ways for them to give us their preferences, their feedback, their complaints. So I think this is one of the aspects of this crisis where we're again challenged to find better ways to do this. I think it's always difficult. It takes time. It takes investment. It takes work. For example, at the IRC, we have various feedback channels. We have a team of phone operators who receive questions and complaints and take feedbacks. But we do it for a number of reasons, and I think the most important reason is that this is something that helps people to regain their feeling of agency, their dignity, and not be only sort of passive recipients of aid, but also to be active participants in those decisions, and to make sure that our services are responsive to their needs. So I think this is something that we've really focused on, and we see as a primary accountability as IRC. I know NRC, other international organizations that kind of adhere to this set of core standards would take the same approach. But I think in this response, we have to think through and do a lot more work to find those channels and make sure that we're doing everything to make that communication accessible to people with disabilities. One of our partners here in the room is the MIGAM that works with people who are deaf and provides translation services for them. So I think the obligation and the responsibility is on us to make those channels accessible so that people are able to claim their rights as refugees. And so this is, I think, something that presents both opportunities and challenges in this response here.
Thank you. And the same question for Jagoda Zakrzewska. I always actually wanted to ask the question to the representative of technological giant, how the perspective, how this Russian invasion changed the perception of, of the dynamic of charity and aid that is possible in the region, and what practices do you think would be changed as a result?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me here today. Our help is constant. We are helping 24/7 all over the world through our Google org. In terms of this particular example and the unprecedented challenge that this region faced, there were, I would say, 3 stages that changed a little bit of how we help, especially in this region. First of all, in the first few months, we were providing humanitarian aid, shelter and food to secure basic needs. And then we were thinking how to help people find their sort of normality in this situation where they had to pack in usually one suitcase and just run and find new place to live and try to find a normality. Our teams were working 24/7 to support people in Ukraine, but also in the neighboring countries through our products, through financial grants, through providing reliable information, because we are living in a society where information is key. Access to reliable information is a key, and we were and we are defending against cyber threats. So this is what is happening now, and this will continue. We are supporting and we will be supporting social entrepreneurship to empower people, because helping is also empowering people and is giving them a chance to be members of the society, even if that is done in this context and not the other.
Thank you. It's actually amazing, that this slogan, Poland First to Help, actually that emerged after the Russian invasion, is actually something that is resonating within the world, because the charity and aid now could be really effective because of the traumas that really surround us by the border. And just going from the current challenges to the future ones, I would like to ask the question for all of you, and we have a very nice mixture of panelists, because we have people who are dealing with a migration crisis. We have people who are dealing with a situation here in Central Eastern Europe. I'm looking at Igor. We have the representative of a technological giant. So you probably would indicate a different thing when it comes to my next question, namely, can you name the most important trend or mega trend that will influence your work until 2030? Perhaps not even now, but the one that would be influencing your work by 2030. So Neil, what's your take on this?
Thanks, Greg. I mean, as an organization, NRC, we have an ambition vision statement for 2030, and there's a number of things in there. It's quite ambitious ambition statement, but there's 3 that resonate, I think, particularly here, and one is definitely innovation and tech. I mean, so in Ukraine last year, as everyone can imagine, the needs increased significantly, and ourselves, NRC, with tech partners, WhatsApp and Twilio, really developed a way to communicate with affected communities in hard-to-reach areas, to understand their needs, to communicate with them, and then to distribute cash to them at scale, like at significant scale. And one colleague said we were kind of flying the airplane while building it, and I think that was really impressive. And because of that need, there was a real leverage to make that work, and it did. And now how do we take that learning to other places and scale that up? The second one, which I've already mentioned, is really partnerships, and I think in a much broader sense. And here in Poland, it really behooves us to not just have INGOs doing their direct programming, but having meaningful partnerships with the private sector and local and national authorities. So not just money from corporations, which is nice, but how do we make specific companies a project partner in what we're doing? So we have one initiative now with St. Urban, who are present at the conference in Northeast Poland, to work with a municipality who provides the housing stock. The St. Urban will help refurbish the houses, and then NRC then supports the local organization to do the case management. And by combining those respective added values and expertise, we can really do some really interesting programming, and I think the context here really lends itself to that. And thirdly, lastly, I mean, for NRC, it's neglected crises globally. So we're very obviously appreciative and grateful for the robust resources being directed towards the Ukraine response and the neighboring countries. But we're also acutely aware as NRC, there are a number of countries globally that struggle to get the attention and investment they need. And that will, I think that, that remains a challenge today. Thanks.
Thank you. When we were discussing the historical momentum with Igor backstage, there emerged, a reference to the Jagiellonian era. Now our society becomes more multicultural, multi-ethnic, but maybe perhaps this mixing is not the most important trend that will shape your work by 2030. What do you think?
Well, Greg, I just want to clarify, is a trend within Central Eastern Europe.
Yes,
that's mega already, yeah? Okay, great. So, if I can, then in that case, I think that for us, in the region, a very important trend, which I don't think many people are talking about, concerns the fact that for the first time for often 200 years, actually, we have a generational transfer of wealth within the context of sovereign countries, right? So we had, of course, we lost independence at the end of the 18th century. Not only Poland, right, in the same situation of Hungary. Then we had one generation in the mid-interwar period, right, in war, communism. And now for the first time, again, there is wealth that has been accumulated over the last 30 years of democracy and capitalism, which is being transferred. And so that requires us to better understand what potential that gives us, right? And of course, the challenges are clear, and they're not only related to the war to our east, but also to the quality of our democracy in this region. And to that end, EFC Foundation has created Philanthropy for Impact, which is a program which is, aims at aiding with developing ideas about how to do systemic philanthropy, right? So there are two, if I still have 30 seconds, there's two important things I see here for philanthropy. One is to diminish government orthodoxy when it comes to solving social problems, right? It's about diminishing government orthodoxy, and it's also about decentralizing the distribution of private good, of public good, excuse me, right? So that's one thing which I think there's a lot to be done. And the other challenge is about, or potential for foundations and for philanthropy in the region, is the fact that we can think longer term and take bigger risks than both state officials, government officials, and business, right? Because if state officials take too much of a risk, they might not be re-elected. Business, obviously, a similar problem for different reason. Foundations, especially privately endowed foundations, should be the ones who take the big risks and are in it for the long run, because they can afford to do these social experiments, which can hopefully pay off in the long run.
Thank you. And what is the most important trend from your perspective, Alan?
I think I would probably go back to the question of empowerment of the affected communities and making sure that we're doing everything we can to put them at the center of our collective humanitarian action, to be accountable to them, to understand what their needs and preferences are, and to break down the various barriers that many of them face to accessing their rights and the services that they need. So I think this is, a problem that and a challenge that we faced for a long time. I'm hoping that with new access to new technologies, in this response in particular, the high level of digital literacy, a lot of creative potential, and a lot of actors that are trying to do what they can to support refugees, will be able to find some innovative ways to really make that ambition a reality and make sure that our response is informed by and responsive to the needs of the people who we're trying to serve. So I think this is, there's again a lot of potential for this, and hopefully some good things in our own arsenals that we can bring to this problem and make some improvements.
So technology can enhance empowerment. If I would ask which technology, I was listening to Google's Victor speech, so I would say AI. But I won't say this because I want you to identify the biggest megatrend. Maybe that's AI. Maybe thanks to this we could basically help better. I don't know.
I think that there are two perspectives to this question. I would like to build a little bit on what Igor said. We believe that solutions are where the problems are, and we need to listen to people who are dealing with challenges, and we need to listen to people who have expertise. So non-governmental organizations, the ones that have very much needed experience. And so that is one way that we are thinking about what is happening now, but what will also happen within 20, 40, 50 years. That will always be like that. We need to listen, and we need to follow people that have expertise. And we are working with organizations that understand communities, understand their challenges, but also can help on a scale using technology. And to agree also with the statement that you put in your question, AI is changing the face of the world. It is changing our, right now it is changing our reality, our world, products that we use, products that we as Google develop, and it will also play a huge role going forward in helping people and helping communities, countries, in foreseeing global challenges that will happen, like floods or other. That will be done by AI. So I would say the mega trends and the future in helping as well is AI.
Thank you very much. The time is up, so wow, it's 5 seconds before time. Amazing. We trained a lot, before. It's really fascinating that the topic of aid really emerges at Impact CE, because we would like to, perceive the region as a region that is involved in, regional and global help. And we also are grateful for you that you're staying with us for the second day by the very end of Impact, and thank you for being here. And then I'm inviting you for the rest of the content of Impact. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a great discussion. Hopefully we could meet and continue at different occasions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.